No.
I get mixed up. I think I had instructions somewhere, but I think they're written down wrong. Okay,
Yay.
great. So we're live.
No.
Now we go. I get mixed up. I
So, I would suggest we get started. And, we will see where this goes.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so, I would suggest.
Oh,
we get started.
I just have to mute.
And,
Okay, there we go.
that's weird.
I forgot to mute it on the live.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order. It is 4:04 p.m. I acknowledge with respect that we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Wawading. Wawading is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from our previous meeting. Could I have someone to move into second adoption of those minutes from July 16th, Mark and Tobin? Any questions, additions, deletions, changes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, cute. Any declarations of pecuniary interest on today's agenda from anyone? Seeing none, we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. So I need someone to do I need to move and seconder first?
So we can't adopt the agenda.
I know, but do I need to move and seconder first? I think I do, because we're not allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so could I have someone to move and to second adoption of today's agenda? Tobin and Eric. All right, so we have an issue talking about changes for additions, deletion. At this moment in time, and we cannot proceed with our meeting until the agenda is approved. At this moment in time, we do have a motion that was put forward by one of the members of our committee. And it is the first item on our agenda, and it was moved by Andrew Judge, who's here. And it was seconded by Nairi Rubal. Fortunately, Nairi is not here, and we would need to have someone who is willing to replace her as a seconder of this motion. Otherwise, we have to strike this from the agenda. So Tobin is saying he's willing to do that. Okay, so a change to the agenda is that the mover and the seconder, I apologize, this item is changed to Tobin Kern. All right, anything further on the agenda? Seeing nothing, all in favor of approval of today's agenda? That is carried. All right, so the first item is a motion, resolution that was put forward by Andrew Judge, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to then, so everybody's aware of the process here, because I don't believe we've ever had a committee member put forward a motion before. So I'm going to read the motion, and then Andrew will have 2 to 3 minutes to speak to the motion that he has written. Then Tobin, as a seconder, will have 2 to 3 minutes to speak to, if he'd like, I realize I know you read it ahead of time, but just so you're aware, the seconder would have 2 to 3 minutes if they would like to speak to the motion. Then we will have a discussion, and we'll see where that discussion goes in terms of how we proceed. All right. Okay, so the motion is resolved that as an environmental sustainability committee at the city of Sault Ste. Marie, whose municipality is in the heart of Robinson Huron Superior Treaty Territory, unsurrendered lands of the Anishinaabe people, known to them as Wawading, the place of the rapids, a capital city that was historically a center for trade and knowledge sharing, for which the city of Sault Ste. Marie acknowledges at the start of each of their meetings, that considerations of Anishinaabe perspectives be included in the Environmental Sustainability Committee's terms of reference. Be it further resolved that sustainability from an Anishinaabe perspective means considering a whole view of sustainability and the impacts of sustainability decisions on the following 9 factors at a minimum: minerals, weather, plants, trees, fungi, birds, mammals, fish, reptiles, and arthropods, which the Anishinaabe consider as relatives. Be it further resolved that the current terms of reference for the ESC do not go far enough to consider the larger impacts of sustainability choices with respect to the perspective of the original peoples whose lands the city currently occupies, including the human, social, and environmental 9 factors noted above costs of sustainability, specifically as it relates to the supply chain for things like electric vehicles, nor the long-term environmental impacts of these choices, nor the disproportionate impacts of these choices on the lands and lives of marginalized people of color and Indigenous peoples worldwide. Therefore, the ESC moves to amend its terms of reference to ensure a more holistic perspective be considered when both promoting and later evaluating the sustainability of applications to the ESC green, it doesn't say green, so I'll just read it here, to the ESC fund, and that applicants must provide some level of evidence that their applications have considered holistic factors as they relate to the Indigenous peoples of Powhatan. Andrew, you've got 2 or 3 minutes to speak to the motion, your motion.
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
We need to, maybe you could speak up a bit. I'm gonna turn my volume up. It's almost at max. Say something again.
Hello.
Okay, can everyone hear him? Okay, very good. You're good, Andrew.
All right, thanks. So yeah, first just thanks to Emily for kind of guiding me through this process. I know that in some of the previous meetings that we've had, this sort of topic around what we consider sustainability has arisen, and it's a bit of a flashpoint, considering some of the applications that we've received and approved. And I just thought, considering my role and why I was originally asked to be on this committee, that it would be in my interest and the interest of the peoples that I try to serve day to day to just take or to offer an amendment to the Environmental Sustainability Committee's terms of reference, because without an amendment, some of the arguments that have been posed by me and others don't really have a sticking point because of the sort of, I don't want to say whole, but then I guess the need for an amendment. So yeah, again, thanks to Emily for kind of coaching me through proposing this amendment. And essentially, I feel that it's very important in terms of sustainability to have a holistic perspective. It's the work that I've been working on for more than 10 years and what I teach and research. And specifically with respect to some of the challenges around electric vehicles and the supply chain around electric vehicles, I think that having a bit more research done, not just in terms of the use of less carbon emissions, but what is the amount of carbon emissions needed to even produce, for example, electric battery, what is their lifespan, what are the impacts in the future should we move completely to electric vehicles, which is sort of seems like the wave of the future. And ultimately, it's not just about electric vehicles for me or that sort of flashpoint, but it's more about ensuring that future applications in their application look at a broader perspective of like the justification for why their request is ultimately sustainable and supports the environment, not just sort of like in reducing carbon emissions, which is just a single measure, which I think we have to go beyond, but does it affect birds and mammals and all the other beings that are a part of our humanity, despite sort of how our current ideology positions us as sort of above all those things. So that's kind of like my argument. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Tobin,
I have no comments. If Andrew needs the time, and I can give the time to Andrew, it certainly can happen, but I have nothing to say.
okay. All right, so,
Given
What?
that, can I add one thing?
yes,
Okay, so probably people wonder like, where does this come from? And I think it's important, those 9 factors, I offer a bit more explanation as to why those and not others. When I was working in Kitchener, I received a shirt grant, and through that shirt grant, I was able to support 4 gatherings of Indigenous leaders and allies. And in total, over the course of those 4 gatherings, we invited around 60 different people to the gatherings. They were over the course of 2 or 3 days, which included a celebration with community, and those celebrations invited over 100 people with, you know, a healthy meal and learning from some of the Indigenous leaders who contributed to these gatherings. Lessons in sustainability and all kinds of different areas. So out of those 4 gatherings, the central question to the gatherings was, what do we consider as Indigenous people with respect to the environment based on each season? And so we gathered in each of the 4 seasons. Those were the 4 gatherings. And as a result of that, that research, those 9 factors came out of the feedback from the people who gathered. Were from students to elders to community leaders to community members, and that's how I came up with those. So they're not mine. They're not original just to me. They're feedback from many Indigenous peoples, from specifically Southwestern Ontario, and specifically a region, but they seem to resonate. I present on these across the country and internationally each year, and they seem to resonate not only with the Indigenous peoples and community members who I present to and share with and learn from, but with everyone who I meet with. So that's sort of the background to why those 9 factors. That is essentially as holistic as you can kind of get, based on
Okay.
feedback from
Thanks,
Indigenous
Andrew.
people.
Thank you. All right, discussion. Thoughts? Anyone? Andre?
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think this is something that I felt from the beginning, it being involved, and I think it's a great progression or expansion of our role. And I thank you for the work you've done on this. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
anyone else have, Eric? We'll go around the table. It seems we're going that way, so.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with the holistic perspective. It's something that resonates with me fully, and something I try to incorporate into my research all the time, but my concern is in the wording. So for example, it says that we would need to consider decisions on the following 9 factors at minimum. So, and So let's say, for example, there's a project that comes. And proposes planting trees on a school property, are they going to have to demonstrate how that impacts fish?
Good question. So, um, I mean, for me, I would say, the simple answer would be yes. Obviously, it's a little complicated and it's not straightforward. I get your question. The more I think we have to be discerning of applications, and like if there's an attempt to go beyond just, oh, we're going to like essentially it's like going beyond just the reduction of carbon emissions. It does lead to some challenges, and I don't think that this is without further discussion and how it sort of manifests into an evaluation. But the simple answer would be yes. And the more complicated answer, obviously, is, with each case, there's going to be challenges in terms of how you position those holistic factors.
Yeah, no, I agree. But just having that in the terms of reference, I think means that we have to stick to it fairly strictly, and we have to evaluate how every study impacts all of these things, and then also. There's nothing on there about, the 9 doesn't include humans and social. Maybe that's, already kind of in the terms of reference and the scope of the project evaluations as well. But I guess what I'm getting at is, should we be careful about how we word this, because it would be very difficult for someone to realistically demonstrate how a lot of these projects would impact all 9. Like almost all the projects that we've approved cannot demonstrate how they impact all 9 of these things.
Okay. Okay, did you have anything else you want to add to the
No.
discussion? Okay. Tobin?
I suppose my comments and concerns reflect what has already been said. I definitely think it's a step in the right direction, because it is attempting to be more holistic, and we do need to consider these things. My concern would be around applications just paying lip service to these things and muddying the water or providing any clarification. However, this is essential. I think it's a step in the right direction. Perhaps it's not perfection, but I think because it's in the right direction, I think it's valuable. Thank you.
Mark?
I think from my perspective, always willing to change, always willing to make better. So from that sense, as from a high level, I would agree, and I think this would be a good change. But I do have a lot of concerns about how to implement those changes and how to go about those changes, so that we're, capturing everybody and making sure that, I know we have a lot of challenges with participation already. So, we just need to be aware, is this going to hinder or, grow more participation? So I think that's part of some of my concerns with it. I think further knowledge or further teachings of what this is specifically needs to happen as a group, so that we understand, better what we're agreeing to and what we're looking at doing. So I think there's some challenges there, I think, for, just wholly approving this now, instead of maybe then, I think we've talked about it, we've done it in the past, have a task force or something to say, okay, this is the goal, but how do we get there? How do we build that to get there, so that when we do implement it, we do put it in as our terms of reference, that it's done, that everybody understands what we're doing and why we're doing it, how we're doing it. And then if somebody in the community comes to us and says, why did you do that, or how did you do that? We have a educated response to that. So that was my only thing about this, is that I'm fully in favor of moving towards it, but I think there's some steps that we need to go before that to happen, before we, implement this or put this to council to put in there. And that was I guess that was what I wanted to bring forward. Just, I had notes from today, so I was just making sure that I was capturing all my points.
Thanks, Mark. Tori?
I think everything that everyone else has already said is great, and I would agree. I think first off, it's a really powerful framework for us to move towards, just like Mark just said. I support that, the spirit and of the resolution, and wanting to adopt a more holistic perspective. I think that's great. But like everyone else shared, perhaps there's a few intermediary steps that we need to take in terms of making it more clear for prospective applicants. And then Mark, I love your point about the education for us as a committee as well. I think that's also really important, and a important step before perhaps this goes to council. So, but no, I think it's a great North Star, if that makes sense.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, so yeah, I appreciate everyone's feedback, and I think that sometimes I make the assumption that everybody is like sort of doing the same thing as me, and I like wrongly make that assumption. So I'm willing to do a couple of things. One is to present, and maybe that's something we could put in a future agenda or separate agenda. I know that we get city people to present, but I realize, yeah, like I've never really shared, and this is what I present on regularly. So like I have slides, and perhaps if I present on it to our committee in a future meeting, and that presentation, like it can't take less than an hour. And you're right, it is a very complex, I forget who said about, how do you implement with all these factors and the tree, but it is extremely complex. Considering 9 factors and all the decisions that you make environmentally it's really speaks to, I mean, if that's the only things that were the decision the decision base for the indigenous peoples of the region prior to the time of colonization, it speaks to their intelligence and the way that they live their lives, and probably the reason why there's not a huge carbon footprint from those peoples and can easily be like wiped away. But one thing that I always talk about is how there were literally millions of Anishinaabe people, and that's just one group of peoples. And if you consider, let's just say 2 million peoples across the Great Lakes and a little bit beyond towards the Rockies and towards the East Coast, that's 2 million mouths to feed every day. And when you start crunching the numbers in terms of what's needed in order to feed that many people daily, it's an extraordinary feat, considering we didn't have any quote unquote modern technology. So I'm open to amending the statement. I'm also open to or the motion, I'm also open to sharing like a baseline. So yes, that if committee members are questioned about, where does this come from? Not only can you have the language to articulate where it comes from, but also for future committee members, and perhaps when I'm off the committee, then you have that presentation on record. It can be recorded and you can lead people to it so they can watch, because the knowledge, well, it does get adapted to the current cycles of humans, like the base of it really doesn't change. It's ancient in its underpinnings. So I put that out there.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, are you aware, just curious, is there an example, is there a community who is, that's a role model or that's done this already? Or would you consider that this type of thinking in the environment, in a funding for environmentally sustainable projects in a community, this is a bit of trailblazing thinking?
So it's a funny choice of term. In terms of, okay, so I wrote a position paper for the federal government, I think it was 2 years ago, where I presented this, and I'm currently working on another project that will use this foundation. It's a project on understanding the cultural significance and threat to culturally significant species of trees in the boreal forest. But what I'm saying in my argument is that you can't look at the trees solely. You have to look at the all the ethnobotanical layers of the forest in order to really evaluate the threat, especially to cultural knowledge. Also, I'm working with Mamawiswin and the Niganian Services, and they have a site in Thessalon First Nation, or in Thessalon, with 15 greenhouses, and they're actually trying to implement. So these 9 factors correspond to 7 steps to sustainability, essentially. And they're trying to implement those steps. One of the steps we're trying to work on right now is the stuff around seed saving and establishing a seed vault. So we're I think next week I go into a couple of the communities to get feedback from community members. In terms of the implementation of this, you can find the implementation of this ideology or worldview in multiple places in the world from Indigenous peoples, although you have to kind of remember that all of this happens in Indigenous languages if it's authentic. And so I do translate these factors, and I mean, if just take one for example. I know I don't have a lot of time, but like you just take birds for example, and you think about all the birds in our region, and there's, I don't even know exactly how many, but there's probably over 100 different species, and each of those birds eats different things, nests in different ways, migrates in different ways, et cetera, and just the factor of birds alone makes sort of understanding, if I plant this tree, what birds are going to be attracted. Why I'm saying that is because it does lead to multitude orders of complexity that again, it's a step in the right direction. How it unfolds and is manifest in terms of the work that we're doing as an environmental sustainability committee. It will be, I guess, up to the team that implements it, should the motion pass, or at least be an amended version of the motion pass. Or if we want to put it on hold and sort of, I can offer a presentation for, like, let's say 1 hour to give so that people really fully understand where this comes from. I'm willing to do so.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm getting the sense from what I heard is that everybody here feels that the intention behind this and the spirit behind it is very important and very thoughtful. How it could work is a bit unclear. And what we would not, I'm gonna put words in, I'm not putting words into anybody's mouth, but I think if I was to extrapolate from what people said, we want this to be to the benefit of funding environmentally sustainable projects. And so, and Mark mentioned about a task force. And a task force would be combined of 3 city staff and 2 members of this committee who could take away, as you suggested, who could take away this idea and pursue it in terms of all the different parameters that you've discussed. In the meantime, I think we could still look at doing a presentation from Andrew as part of that for the whole committee, not just a task force. So have I misread the room at all? Did I say what
I was just gonna say, and I think to my point, the reason why I'm saying start with the task force and move there. Only because I think if we say, yes, we'll go with this now, and then it goes to council for approval. And without educating council and having them understand why we're doing it and how we're doing it. You know, it could be turned away type of thing. I think the better we go to a council prepared and with some of these things, sorted out and understanding from us, I think the better we are. And I don't want it just to go to council as is and possibly get voted down and then have to go back to the drawing board or figure something out down the road. I think,
Right.
Let's just, in my mind, and this is just in my opinion, kind of go through this process and so that we understand it, and then we can go to council with a resolution that we feel strongly about.
Okay.
About implementing.
Okay, and so with some guts behind it, if you will, right? With some, with these concerns or these challenges worked through and okay. So now, in order to do that, I need someone, I think I need someone to propose an amendment. So I'm looking over here at Mark. And then I'm gonna need someone to second that amendment. And the idea would be, it's a task force, we have to have 3 city staff. So that would be a task force, 3 city staff, which would include Emily, Janice, Janice, my apologies, Janice Golez and Travis Anderson, and then 2 committee members to be determined from the environmental sustainability. We'll have to decide who those people would be today. And that task force be struck to discuss and propose how this be implemented into the Green Initiative Fund's terms of reference. And that the working group be required to report to the ESC until this is completed. So would you be willing to move that amendment?
Can I say 2 things?
You can say anything you like, as long as we're on the topic.
That's not true. I just, from my perspective, I guess I want to understand that, going forward, since Andrew brought this forward, that he's okay with this, and he, agrees to this, because at the end of the day, we are going to be asking him for some of this stuff and for help with this. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure.
Yeah, procedurally.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, we got to do that. And then the other
Yes.
point I want to make is, and I said it before, for the task force, and it's an N+1, so there has to be, for every many committee members of committee, there has to be 1 more city staff.
Mhm.
And that's, so it's not a 2 to 3 ratio, or it could be a
It's
10 to
not set in
11
stone, like it could-
type of ratio, just so people are aware of how the task forces are, is that it's always committee members plus
Correct,
1
correct.
for staff members. So that's, I guess those are just the 2 things that I wanted to point out that we're aware.
So,
And then I'd be more than happy
And
to
it
make
can't make quorum, because then it would be
yeah,
a subcommittee.
correct.
yeah.
So that's the difference between, and
Okay.
this is a specific task, which is
Right.
why a task force is.
So thinking about, and I'm gonna bring this up now because we have to get the wording right on this.
Yep.
In order to have you say yes, and then whether Andrew is in support of that, just so we're clear on that, and you could support that amendment at then seconded by Andrew. I'm thinking, because I feel like, personally, I feel like 2 committee members just isn't enough. There's so much expertise around this table in terms of experience and knowledge and so on, that it might be a challenge. So if we're keeping with the rule, 3 to 2 or 4 to 3, would this be an opportunity if we wanted to add so that we could put 3 people, okay? If we wanted to, like, would this be an opportunity to involve somebody on staff from a different department? And I don't know that I have a suggestion about which department, but it really could help the broadening of the understanding across the corporation of the city.
Yep.
Right, about this type of an initiative, to add a staff person, a 4th one, so we can have more committee members, number 1, but number 2, so that we are, because there aren't very many people in your department, as we know.
Correct.
Right? So I just put that out there for some thought. And I also know, however, and that we have an Indigenous advisor being hired by the city of Sault Ste. Marie, and would that person qualify as a staff person?
They have yet to be hired.
They-
I don't
right.
believe that the interview process has commenced yet.
So that's a little down the road,
Yeah.
do we think? So what are your thoughts about number of people? 4 plus 3 or 3 plus 2?
Do we have to name the number of people now?
Well,
Well,
it would depend on
we-
who's interested.
we have, if we don't name the number of people, then we have to change the wording of the amendment. Because right now the wording that we've put together here, based on the comments, is specific to 3 plus 2. So we could leave it as a task force be struck, which would include city staff plus members of the committee, number to be determined, that would blah, blah, blah. We can do that. Okay, so
I'm okay with that. I didn't like anybody else.
You just said something kind of offhand earlier, though, that the task force would report back to the ESC.
correct.
Okay. That's good, then I'm comfortable with. It being a small task force then.
So any comments, like this task force would get together, focusing on this task. We would have them as an agenda item on our committee meeting agenda. And they would provide an update, and that would be the venue with quorum in open, where we would discuss this in full.
Okay.
So it's a resolution as it already exists, added to it, and that a task force comprised of city staff and committee members from the ESC be struck to discuss and propose how this would be, I have the word, would be implemented into the Green Initiatives Fund terms of reference, and that the working group and that the task force be required to report to the ESC until completed. Okay, are you comfortable with that?
Is there like sorry, I just have a quick question.
Yes,
Is
go
there
ahead.
gonna- Is there going to be a timeline to that? Like, because, I guess realizing based on everybody's feedback, which is all good. And I didn't really think of this, but this proposal is quite vast, like the possibilities are vast. So I think at some point we got to sort of like put a timeline in terms of when a deadline for,
What would you, Andrew, what would you like to see?
I mean, a quarter would be fine, 3 months or 3 moon cycles.
How do you feel about that?
So here's September, October, November, December. So like by the end of the year, we don't have a committee meeting scheduled for December, but we can make one. Like we've got meetings scheduled for the next 2 months. So if the task force were to meet and they were able to move ahead. Like, and get this done with the approval of the committee and then getting it to council. Hopefully. December, early part of December is busy because of budget. So we could try our best, but certainly by January, like the council meeting in January, I think
I'm
that.
comfortable with January or February, considering what you
I-
just said.
Yeah.
I think it. Well, the way I understood what Andrew just saying was not that we expect to have it approved by council, but the work of the task force would take place over the next
Sure.
3 to 4 months. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So if we said by January, then the work of the task force by January, is that fair?
By the
Right.
end of January.
Right,
Yeah.
just, okay,
And we can add by January 20.
right, right, okay. Yeah. So are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, Mark is moving that. Andrew, are you comfortable with the amendment and would you like to second the amended resolution?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, teamwork. Okay, so I will, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. I won't reread, I will just, are we perfectly clear? We've made an amendment and it is the existing resolution added to, and that a task force comprised of city staff and committee members from the ESC be struck to discuss and propose how this would be implemented into the Green Initiative Fund terms of reference, and that the task force be required to report to the ESC and complete this work by January 2025.
Should we not select the committee members? Because if we.
Well,
don't,
until we, hold on,
like, if we don't select the committee members.
maybe we could do this. It's the 3-2, whatever.
Well, if we, I know, like, I mean, we'll find other city staff, okay, like, we'll find some other people if need be. But if we select the committee members who want to be part of this task force now, then we can get rolling.
Okay, so let's ask this question then. Who would be willing to be interested in serving on this task force? Mark
Andrew raised.
and Andrew. Okay, so that gives us 3 + 2,
That gets two committee members
correct,
plus 3 city.
plus
staff.
3 staff, that's right, that's right,
Sorry.
okay. And is there anyone else who is interested if we did get to the point where we added another staff person because it might be a good idea? Is anyone else interested in serving or participating? Seeing none, okay.
I just want to say that, just keeping in mind that Nairi is the original seconder, and I know I was supposed to go to her class today, but she's not here, so she might actually be willing, and I think she'd be a great contributor. So we might want to pose that to her since she's absent today.
Yeah, unfortunately, because she's not here right now, we can only deal with what we know right now, but that's a good comment, or something to be aware of.
We have.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, are we clear? And with the amended resolution, which has been moved by Mark and seconded by Andrew, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the environmental sustainability terms of reference update. And Emily, I just want to clarify something. Now, the actual terms of reference amended are not in this. Oh, yes, they are. Never mind, forget it. Sorry, they're back here. Okay. So I need someone to move and someone to second the this agenda item with regards to the terms of reference update. No, I don't. I do not need that right now. I do. No, it's an item on the agenda.
Right, we have a resolution.
But we don't need the resolution until we get there. Okay, right?
So we're gonna talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it. So you have yes, you have information in your presentation. So the revised terms of reference are in your agenda package, and they were at the end of Emily's staff slides and update.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened.
Okay.
So that's page
14 of 16 it starts on.
Page 14, okay, so, there was, a direction for committees of council from the city clerk's department to seek alignment with all the other formal committees of council terms of reference. So our terms of reference as a committee have been amended. Some of the key pieces really are amending meetings from quarterly to bi-monthly, so every 2 months as well as needed. Because that's what we've really been doing. As well, the term length for committees. We were one of like 2 that had a 4-year term. And so we've now reduced that to 2 years in line with the majority of the other committees of council. As well, in the responsibilities pillar, we've made it more specific to include a timeline. So March 31st for the committee to review the city's annual sustainability report, obviously starting next year, and to develop feedback and recommendations for budget consideration. So it's a specific timeline that also aligns with when the city staff will be preparing for budget for the upcoming year. So that's been amended within the terms of reference. So the terms of reference are there. They're really straightforward. They're broken out into different sections, including the purpose of the committee, the duties, the composition, responsibilities, the chair, how the meetings will be held, delegations, conflict of interest, and all of this is in line with the city's procedural bylaw, which is the main governing document for all committees, council, and municipal business in general. So open for discussion or questions. These again are the committee terms of reference that just say who we are, what we do. Yeah. So just, I guess I'll say with regards to the term, I know some of you, Eric, Mark, Andre, been here before on the committee. Just because your term ends does not mean that you have to leave. Like, you're welcome to apply again. So there's no limit on that.
So the intention there is to tell someone who was appointed to a committee for 4 years that now you're no longer appointed for 4 years, you're only appointed for 2.
Well, about one of several things.
I know, but you just meant
That
mentioned
statement,
that point.
yeah, in alignment with all the other committees.
So, okay, so so the intention is to rescind the 4-year appointment
Yeah,
and reconstitute it as a 2-year appointment?
As opposed to the next term starting at 2. We are now revised to 2 years instead of 4.
correct,
So that's ending relatively soon.
correct.
When did we start?
2 years ago.
January 2022.
So we're,
Sorry, 2023.
so we're ending before this subtask would even, or
Mhm.
task
Yeah.
force would even be completed.
That's a good point.
I don't know, you might not be the right person to be asking this question to, but like, was that thought about in terms of that? Instead of putting that in place going forward, starting next year, so, right, which is still within the 2-year system. You're rescinding, so not you, the appointment for 4 years of committee members is being rescinded. And changed to 2 years. That is what the plan is.
Yeah, but there's no, you must do this by X date. It's just trying to create some cohesion amongst the committees of council. I think it's a good point. We've got this big task ahead of us. Maybe this review should be held off. Or the approval of the terms of reference should be held off until we at least finish that. I don't know.
What about from the opposite point of view, maybe somebody does want out? And
Well,
just
then
doesn't feel like bringing it up or doesn't.
Then they
feel
can resign. People can resign at any time.
Feels confident to bring it up.
They can resign, I'm on other committees, people resign partway through their term. It's not like you're,
It's not unheard of.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just,
So, like, you know, this is not, like, this is really a administrative thing, okay? That, you know, this was a meeting where we didn't have to evaluate applications. So it's been there on my desk for a while, but Eric, you bring forward a good point. You know, why do this when you've got all the knowledge about this in particular task?
We'd either have to amend the task to finish before, because, yeah, we can apply again.
Yeah.
But I think all of the applicants, we might bring new people in and there's no guarantee that.
Yeah.
People on that task force would be brought back, right?
Yep. Yep.
Is the term mentioned in the terms of reference? I did my mind, I don't see it, but I'm reading it very fast.
Yeah.
So,
So page 14. Are appointed every 2 years.
oh, there it is. Okay, I see, I read it too fast. Well. I don't know.
This, are we just talking about the appointments? I mean, are you trying to get rid of somebody or?
No. Not at all. No, it like, you know, I'm not really supposed to. You know, I'm not supposed to say, but like, yeah, like that's a really good point. Like, I think we should. I would suggest we hold off on this, especially given this new task. There's no one telling me these terms of reference must be done by the end of the year. If I'm told otherwise, well, we can revisit it. But that would be my suggestion, not knowing the process fully.
Okay. How does everybody feel about that? What does it say now relevant to the number of meetings per year?
Quarterly, well, like previous, like,
Yeah,
right,
the current terms of reference,
the current terms of reference read quarterly or as needed, right? So this one would be more regularly, like we're making it every 2 months in addition to it. Actually, the original terms of reference are monthly,
yes, that's what
um,
I thought,
monthly,
that's what I thought,
and then quarterly once we get going, because the committee
Right.
just started, yeah.
right. Oh, no, honey, it does say, meetings will be held quarterly on the first Tuesday unless additional meetings called at the discretion, so
Okay.
it right
Well,
now says
very
quarterly. So. Can we get some, are we setting this aside for not,
Can I have a question?
Yes.
For,
Yeah,
the budget consideration.
yes. You have the original terms of reference. Okay, so.
Can you explain what that?
Yeah, so in the original terms of reference,
in the front?
yeah, in the original terms of reference, we had a series of responsibilities for the committee, okay? So things like, reviewing the Green Initiatives Fund applications, supporting initiatives that promote environmental sustainability, creating and highlighting opportunities for the general public. And so there was also a recommendation, not a recommendation, a responsibility of, to oversee, to recommend project priorities. I'm just looking at the track changes here, so bear with me. Sorry, develop a list of priorities, which support environmental sustainability for council consideration as part of the annual budget cycle. So we did that in the letter that was written last year. But this takes that to the next level by putting in specifics associated to a timeline. So you can take a look at the city's sustainability report, which is going to include an update on corporate and community emissions. So are we making progress? Are we reducing, for further ammunition for what those priorities are? So it just beefs it up a bit, really.
Well, my The reason I'm asking, maybe just sort of clear in my head. Currently, the city spends a lot of money on things that are actually counterproductive to our goals. And when you're looking at budget consideration, is this not an opportunity to say, why are you spending millions of dollars on road expansion project when that is demonstrating that it actually doesn't help people to consider alternatives to transportation? That's why.
So having this, like, sorry, and there's two other things. So we had, this committee was going to, in the original terms of reference, include reporting on progress annually. When this committee was created, there was no me. Now there is a me, and I do that in my annual sustainability report. So because, like, I get what you're saying, but the way that this new priority is written, which is review the city's annual sustainability report to be completed by March 31st each year to develop priorities for consideration as part of the annual budget cycle. If emissions are going up corporately and within the community, that catches it. And so you would have an opportunity before the budget proposals are finalized to bring forward, hey, we're behind, or okay, you're doing all right there. And so this group would act as sort of an overseer, but have that ammo behind.
I think, well, I mean, the reason I'm saying this, of course, Tobin would agree, I think sometimes can't spend, like, environmental sustainability often saves money, right? Things that we wouldn't do, so.
So I want to just point, because I had to go read this letter myself several more times. I keep a copy with all my stuff now because to remember. So to your point, Andre, okay, we sent this letter to the mayor and the staff and council, okay, in June of 2023.
Okay.
Okay. And on it were 3 short-term and 3 long-term priorities. We discussed this, we rated, we evaluated, we debated, we did whatever, right? So number 3 on the top long-term list is develop a corporate sustainable roads approach and or strategy. The road sector produces the highest level of, okay? So it's speaking to your point, yes. Just to remind you, it's speaking to your point. So we said, based on what we know and the direction and what we're trying to achieve, these are the things that our multiple brains recommend that you implement 3 + 3. Okay. So the timeline, forcing the timeline for the annual sustainability report to be presented. So then we have some meat to chew on to be able to give valuable feedback in the form of a letter or direction or whatever we decide to do every year that addresses where do we want to be, where are we at now, and what are the key things we think need to be focused upon. Does that help? Does that tie those things
I
together?
just wanted to make sure that that was the case.
Yes,
Thank
that is the case.
Yeah.
Just one other quick comment to the term period. We might want to consider the term of this starting after March 31st and not ending January if there's always going to be a review by March 31st.
The terms
The
start.
term of the ESC, we ended in January. But we're always supposed to be,
It would, like, right now as it stands, when there's like how this committee was struck is when the election, there was a municipal election in 2022. So in January 2023, this committee was started.
Right.
In 4 years. And that's just like, that's more on like a procedural standpoint, like it's going to start in January and it's going to end in December.
Yes,
But-
those terms, because they run this January to December.
Yeah.
And there's a system in place, doesn't mean you couldn't change the system, but the system is that all the applications for committees go in the fall, then they, there's a selection process or a meeting or whatever, and those people are appointed for the next 2 years, starting in January.
okay.
It's not tied to the work plan, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, so should this March 31st be revised to be earlier? Like,
I don't think so. Because from an emissions, like from a carbon counting standpoint, like if we're looking at March 31st in 2024, we would want to be able to capture all of the emissions from 2023. And there's a couple of months
Yeah.
catch-up period
Just like any fiscal year.
for total energy consumption for assets. So no sooner than that. Plus, again, Department of
But the timeline, the timeline was suggested in order
to
to
meet city budget.
in order to be able to provide information that then is considered in the budget process. And that's the real key thing, is the budget process, because nothing happens without money. And money gets only,
It's not a big deal, but it's
Yeah.
just if you start in this position, in the ESC for 2 years, you start in January. You're involved in a review within a
Yeah.
couple of months.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, you're finishing. You know, you're right away, you're involved in review. You're
Yeah.
Involved in another one a year later.
Yeah.
Probably starting to formulate ideas, and then you're not involved in the
Yeah.
next one. I don't know. It's
I
like a bit of a
I
disconnect,
think
but
you bring forward a good point, and there's no black and white, I've learned here.
Yeah.
Okay, like from a procedural standpoint, like, you know, there's like all the committees, despite an attempt for cohesion, there hasn't been a mandate. So I think you bring forward a good point, like we're still getting our footing, it's a young-ish committee.
Yeah.
Maybe, it's really in my place, but it's just the logic in my brain, like maybe we should keep 4-year term.
yeah, I don't know, just all these things to think about.
Yep.
I'm not sure, I don't have the answer right now.
No.
either.
No, so maybe we pull it for now, or we don't accept those
Maybe it's not,
changes.
maybe it's not a big deal, but it just strikes me that there's a disconnect there, if that's a
Yeah.
key responsibility of the committee.
so what do you feel comfortable doing? Shall we pull it and come back to it? We do have a meeting planned for October and November, even though we have a quarterly. We
Yeah.
put meetings
We
in
did,
place
because we have fund applications.
because we had other, okay. So shall we just? Well, shall we just, it doesn't have a mover and seconder yet, so shall we just? Pull it, we'll go back, we'll look at what
Yeah,
Sounds like it's-
makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, done. All right. Moving right along to, I lost my agenda now. That's what I thought it was, staff update.
okay, so just a couple of updates on my end, with regard to the committee. So, one of them was the 2023 letter, that Donna brought forward. An email was received from the CAO, Tom Bear, regarding the city's draft strategic plan. It's going to include an accompanying document which will outline actions, timelines, metrics for all high-level goals. And this is where specific action items will be included, and some of the short-term priorities mentioned in the ESC letter could be included. Short-term priorities, make climate action a top priority in the city's strategic plan. That is before council now with their feedback on the plan and whether what is included is appropriate. Conducting an annual sustainability audit on the city's budget and require city staff to have their climate impact statement on council reports reviewed by the sustainability coordinator. The email went on to say that the long-term priorities, so an ESG policy, developing a green development standard, corporate sustainable roads approach and or strategy would be significant effort of staff and require a council resolution. So that is the response that we've received for that. It's encouraging to note that there will be an accompanying document with action. Because the strategic plan is, very high level. So that is the update on that. A couple of other things, we are nearing the end of our deep energy retrofit audit project. So this is an audit of the top 6 city emitters. And we're hoping to have that wrapped up by the end of the year, or by the end of the month rather, sorry. And this is a big deal, and that will be going to council talking about the costs, the utility savings, and how we get those top emitters to net zero. I'll bring a report to the committee as well. The city's battery electric bus study work is ongoing for this. And this will provide the city with costing, technology, and timelines to support electrification of the bus fleet. We held the kickoff for the John Rose roof replacement. And this project seeks to replace the roof, but in order to accommodate future solar panels, as well as implement a heat recovery and HVAC replacement, aligning with our energy efficiency goals. The transit solar project is underway. This is the city's first solar project. We completed a full conversion of LED lighting at the Manso pool as well. Wrapped up. Buildings to net zero. The city of Sault Ste. Marie was selected as a cohort participant in the GIFLA, so Local Governments for Sustainability Building to Net Zero project. And this project is designed to support municipalities in the adoption of building energy performance frameworks. That starts up at the end of the month and actually aligns with the priority of Green Development Standard. We did have a sustainability summer student this summer. She did some great work regarding educational programming at community events, regarding pollinators. Green Initiatives Fund reminder to the committee, please go and reach out to your network. Applications are open for the third intake of the city's Green Initiatives Fund. This closes September 30th. The application is linked in your packages. Any leads are appreciated. City's sustainability report, that's expected by the end of October. And there's also going to be a Sioux Climate Hub event. I've been contacted by them to present at. This is a positive climate change action event at Clark Park on Friday at 4:30 p.m. And that's my update.
Anybody got questions for Emily about her staff update or about that staff update?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, so I believe that is the last item on our agenda. The next meeting is Thursday, October 10th. At 4 p.m. You'll be advised of which room here. I will take the opportunity to say that, well, it does say hybrid, in-person and virtual. I strongly ask that wherever possible, you come in person. It's just my perspective, but it's just really nice to have a conversation across the table from people and look people in the eye. And I do understand people have difficult schedules and so on, that sometimes it's just not possible to physically be here, and you know, your participation is important for quorum, etc. But wherever possible, if you can come in person, it's greatly appreciated. All right, I need a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting. Tobin and Mark, all in favor, be resolved, the committee now adjourned. That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. See you in October.